Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
100 songs that define heavy metal. 100 songs that define heavy metal. 100 songs that define heavy metal. 100 songs that define heavy metal.
Welcome to 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal. I'm your host, Brian Slagel, the CEO of Metal Blade Records. MetalBlade.com for all the information if you'd like to go there to get more info. The next time you're in Las Vegas, or if you currently live in Las Vegas or the Las Vegas area, you need to visit the Metal Blade Museum. Now, not only are there artifacts from Metal Blade artists like Metallica, Slayer, Cannibal Corpse, Gwar, Lizzie Borden, there's also artifacts from bands that we had something to do with as well, like Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Alice Cooper, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really great metal museum. It's located right near the Strip in Las Vegas. Also, our retail store is also now in the museum. So you can go pick up your Metal Blade vinyl, CDs, collectibles, shirts, all sorts of cool stuff. Just go to metalblade.com/museum for all the details. And this time we're talking about a bit controversial, I've been told, my favorite Ozzy Osbourne song, and that is Bark at the Moon. And it's my favorite just because I love the song. I love Jake E. Lee on it. He's an incredible guitar player, and that lead at the end of the song is just so insane. And also was coming up, and look, I'm a massive Randy Rhoads fan, and of course, the first two Ozzy records with Randy are incredible, legendary records. But, you know, once Randy passed, I think a lot of people thought, what's going to happen to Ozzy and how is this going to work? And in comes Jake. And from my opinion, I don't think they really missed a beat. And I always love this song. I think it's just a really great song. So it'll be super fun to talk about it. We're going to talk with our old friend Bill Metoyer about the production of it. We know him from being around, and a new guest to our world, Adam Rank, who is on the Jim Rome show and also is on NFL Network. But he's a big music guy and he's a big fan of the song too. So that's going to be super fun. As always, though, we're going to begin it with the man who's written almost 150 books on hard rock and heavy metal, the master, Mr. Martin Popoff.
Yes, indeed. Bark at the Moon, Ozzy Osbourne. So this is from Ozzy's third album, also called Bark at the Moon, November 14th, 1983. So this is the first album with Jake E. Lee. We've seen Brad Gillis in the band briefly. We've seen Bernie Torme. Jake is in here. There's some of these credit shenanigans that go on here. You know, apparently he's presented with a contract after, no, we're going to credit everything to Ozzy. Bob Daisley's kind of in the same situation. So we've got Jake, Bob, and this is the only Ozzy album with Tommy Aldridge on drums. Max Norman produces this. They're working at Ridge Farm. They get a really kind of modern, corporate, but cool and still very compressed and anxious production quality on this. You get kind of this mechanized drum feel from Tommy. But yeah, this is a very heavy song to be released as the first single. So it was the first single from the album. We got that crazy video where Ozzy had to spend all that time dressing up like a werewolf. Second single from the album, We Got So Tired. as well. Rock and Roll Rebel's a big song off of here also. But yeah, Bark at the Moon got to number 12 on Billboard, helped get the album to triple platinum, which is its current status. It went gold pretty much right away. Great riff from Jake, very rapid fire. Ozzy did relent eventually and say, I did write this with Jake, and it's the first song we wrote together, so he says. But we've got that great technical rapid fire riff. Very quick right hand. We've got the echoing laugh in there. We got some synthesizer swells from Don Airey as well. It rocks along very heavy. Then we get that ornate sort of halftime feel at the 1:30 mark. You get more synthesizers in there as well. Jake's solo, I'm not crazy about this guitar solo. It's very chaotic and noisy. Eventually, there's some nice sort of classical runs to close it out. And then we get, the climax to the stop and then the riff on its own. And then we're into another verse. I always like when they do that kind of thing. So yeah, great song. I think it's pretty much the song that has lived on the best from here. I really have a soft spot for Rock and Roll Rebel. I have a soft spot for this album. We have our video channel, The Contrarians, where early on we would pick a contrarian choice as favorite album by a band, and I did a whole episode on Bark at the Moon. I like Bark at the Moon a little bit more than Diary of a Madman, just by a tiny bit, but those are my two favorites. So yeah, great choice. Bark at the Moon, opening track from Bark at the Moon.
I agree with everything Martin said, except I will disagree with his assessment of the guitar solos. I think they're absolutely brilliant. And I am glad that Ozzy eventually, did let people know that Jake had a lot to do with writing the song, because I know Jake was very proud of the song. So that's really cool. Of course, they kind of reconciled, and Jake was at the back to the beginning, which I think was really, really cool as well. So yeah, good stuff. Thank you, as always, Mr. Martin Popoff. And we get to welcome back our good friend, the legendary producer and engineer, Mr. Bill Metoyer.
Hi, everybody.
Whose list of credits is about 5 miles long. All right, so we're talking Ozzy, Bark at the Moon. A lot of really interesting things about this song, some of which we can talk about and some of which we probably cannot. But the credits on this I found really fascinating. It's produced by Ozzy Osbourne, of course. Bob Daisley gets a production credit, and Max Norman, and of course engineered by Max. And it was mixed by Tony Bongiovi at the Power Station in New York. And they recorded this record somewhere in England, some old castle or something, I think. When you listen to it, I mean, it's a classic Max Norman sounding record. Ozzy's taking all the credit for everything on this record, which is kind of interesting, but that's a whole other story. But the production part of it, was interesting. The thing that really, I love this song. This was the background, and we'll talk more about this with Adam. But Adam Rank does the After Hour with Jim Rome, and as part of that program, he does something called Rank's Rank, which is he picks his 5 favorite things of something, and he picked his 5 favorite Ozzy songs. And I was like, oh, okay, let's see what this is like. And it was great. He picked like all these really great songs, and this one being the third song that he picked. And this is my favorite Ozzy song.
Really?
Yes, my favorite Ozzy song. Stuff with Randy is incredible, and I love those records. But I always just loved this song. Everything about this song, I think, is just really, really well done, and an important song for Ozzy too, because this is what his. After Randy, nobody knew what the heck was going to happen with him. And, he got Jakey Lee in the band and made this incredible record. And, this song being one of them. And the leads, of course, Jake is an incredible guitar player, but the leads in this were really interesting. If you listen to it in headphones, there's a lot of panning going on with, especially the first lead. Like it's kind of being panned left to right, like kind of, whoa. I love panning. When we were in the studio, I would try to pan as much as possible to make things interesting. But that was kind of interesting. I wonder why he panned it like that. It's also some like weird phasing or something going on too.
Yeah, that's just classic Max Norman with the panning, the phasing, the backwards reverb at the end of the song. That's all Max. That's one of the reasons why he is one of my favorites. I consider him a mentor. He's a friend. Thanks to you, I actually got to meet him and hang out with him at the studio when he was working with Lizzie Borden. And we stay in touch. In fact, one of the last records I did was another Hyrax record that I recorded and Max Norman mixed.
Oh, nice.
So I finally got a record that has both of our names on it.
Nice.
It was all classic Max Norman. The only thing that when I did hear this song, obviously it sounds great, but I got to be honest, this song had to grow on me.
Really?
Yeah, even though Jake is a great guitar player, there was something about Randy Rhoads' sound. And it didn't sound exactly like Randy Rhoads.
Well, of course. No one sounds like Randy Rhoads.
Yeah, and Randy was so incredible. But you got to love Jake. Jake was like my neighbor in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
You know, so
we used to all hang. We used to hang quite a bit with Jake back in the day. I remember when the song first came out. I in full disclosure, I heard some demos earlier of this song as well. But I was just blown away by how great it was, and I think Ozzy's performance on this song is incredible. I love the chorus. I mean, to me, it's just a phenomenal song, and definitely a lot different than the Randy stuff for sure. But I don't know, just something about this song. I love the way Jake plays. The leads are incredible, and that outro lead is freaking unbelievable. It's like one of my favorite leads ever.
The guy was amazing. He had some big shoes to fill.
A little bit,
and he did a great job.
Yeah,
but like I said, it did have to grow on me. I think one of the things that helped it grow on me was just the video.
Yeah.
You know, that video was so cool with Ozzy being a werewolf. And, you know, Jake looked great, dressed up, shredding. And, you know, he was always a great front man.
Yeah.
Even when he was with Mickey Rat. But,
yeah.
Yeah,
they were super heavy though. People don't remember, like, the original version of Rat was pretty heavy. Actually, we saw them a lot before Jake left, and they were like very Judas Priest like when he was in the band. They all wore black leather, and he played a flying V, and it was definitely kind of old school Priesty. And then when he left and Warren came in, that's when it started to kind of move a little bit more towards the commercial end.
Yeah, that's why it was exciting to hear that Jake E. Lee was going to be on it, because of, you know, we did know him way back then. I think I saw them at the Valley West Supper Club.
Yes, you did.
At Mickey Rat. So, yeah, it was pretty cool to have somebody from the neighborhood. So I was so excited for this to come out. But like I said, it had to grow on me, and it did grow on me. And that song is amazing. Max Norman, he's great.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows how to nail it. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, I wish he'd come on the show, though. I've asked him before, and he's like, he doesn't do this sort of stuff apparently. So
well, neither do I, darn it. But somehow you get me going into this.
The mixing part of it too is interesting. I'm surprised that Max didn't mix it, because when you listen to it, I mean, Tony Bongio, he's a great mixer and makes great sounds. But when I listen to the mix, you can tell it's a little bit different from what Max might have done. Maybe more the drum sound might have been a little different from a Max Norman mix thing. But I was really surprised that Max didn't mix it. I have no idea why. I mean, you know, I'm sure they had their reasons, but still, Tony did a good job of making it still sound very Max-like.
Yeah, like I said, I think just a little more polished than something that Max might have done. But
maybe so.
Great song, still a great record, and really good production.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love these sort of records that didn't have the massive snare sound and all that stuff, because so many records back then did. It's always refreshing to hear that now. It's like, oh, this sounds like a record that could have been recorded a year ago.
Exactly. Very cool.
Yeah, it's really, really good stuff. Well, thanks again, Mr. Metoyer, for doing this, as always. Appreciate that.
Always a pleasure.
Hey, everyone. Brian Slagel here, founder of Metal Blade Records. You know, I spent my whole entire life trying to make metal history and make metal better and promote metal as much as I can. And now there's a brand new way for you to test your metal knowledge and relive those iconic moments. It's called Metal Mondays, the official metal trivia game from Metal Blade and Pantheon Media, and it's free to play right now. Every Monday, a new game drops. From Slayer, Supremacy to Death, Metal 101, 80s, Metal Blade Classics, and tons more. You'll battle it out on the leaderboards, win killer prizes, and even score some exclusive Metal Blade merch. So if you think you know your riffs, your legends, and your deep cuts, prove it. Download Hit Replay on the App Store or Google Play, or head to metalbladerecords.com/Metal Mondays and start playing today. Because in metal, there's no off days. Only Metal Mondays. Metal Mondays. Play loud, play true, and play to win. All right, super excited to welcome this next guy in. You know him from the NFL Network. There's many shows. You know him from his Bears podcast. You know him from the After Hour with Jim Rome, of course. He also does stand-up comedian. He's also a stand-up comedian, and he once jammed with the legendary Lloyd Grant, who was the original guitar player who played the lead on the original Metallica Hit the Light song that was on the original Metal Massacre. Adam Rank, how are you, sir?
What a great introduction. Thank you so much about that. I don't want to go too much into the Lloyd Grant story, because you've told it enough to where I sound really cool. Wasn't as cool as that sounds, but it was. I knew what I was doing. And yeah, I will use that as one of my credits.
Hey, look, if you're on stage with Lloyd Grant, that's a legendary status right then and there. So for those of you that know Lloyd. So to give everybody some context here, because you might not all know. So Adam does, as I mentioned, the After Hour with Jim Rome. And part of that, Adam does something called Ranks, where he has his top 5 favorite things or various things, sports, music, culture, the whole thing. So one of them, Adam goes, here's my top 5 Ozzy Osbourne songs. Now, to be honest, I was a little bit like, we're going to get No More Tears and Crazy Train and, whatever. But Adam, to his credit, did a phenomenal top 5 and included at number 3, my personal favorite Ozzy Osbourne song. I'll get into this in a minute, why I think it's important. The Great Bark at the Moon. Where did that song come from? And why did you pick that at number 3 on your list?
I was thinking about that too. My age, and obviously for many people, you get locked into Ozzy Osbourne through Crazy Train. And I think with a lot of artists, you always have to have a proof of concept of, I will like this band, not just this one song, I will like this band. And this was right around the time Bark at the Moon came out. Amazing song, great video, obviously one of the early pioneers of using video as a medium. Like when you think of Crazy Train, like obviously the video for Crazy Train's a little bit off because Randy Rhoads has passed away and they've got they try to, but like Bark at the Moon is one where you're like, it's not Thriller, but you can tell they were putting in some production to it, which also led to it. But like the guitar part of it is awesome. Jakey Lee, like really great guitarist, like really good. And I thought that everything about that song, that was one that people were like number 3, and you're like you said, everybody wants
the metalheads know that that's important, and I'll give you the reason why in a second, but I'll let you finish your thought.
No, but it was really one of those things where you're like, I like Ozzy. Like this is okay. I'm an Ozzy Osbourne fan. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other ones, Mr. Crawley, and so many great songs. I remember Bark at the Moon and that album coming out, and I think if that was the tour where Motley Crue was supporting them. That was the one where you're like, it cemented me as an Ozzy Osbourne person. But yeah, just a great song.
Yeah, phenomenal. But this song to me, so of course we know, Ozzy left Sabbath and he was a mess and he came back and nobody expected he was ever going to have any sort of solo career. Kind of shocked everybody. And then of course he gets Randy Rhoads and he's these first 2 iconic records, right? So amazing. We're all happy for Ozzy. Then the horrible thing with Randy happens. And then you don't really know what's going to happen. And a lot of us were, okay, now what? Like, he's not going to find 2 amazing guitar players in a row. And let alone, can he continue to make music at that level? Was this all Randy that was doing it? Like, we didn't really know. And a lot of people within the business and within the fans thought like his career really hung in a balance. Then he gets Jake into the band and they put out this incredible Bark at the Moon record with this particular song on it, which it's definitely top 100 songs for sure. Probably for me, as I mentioned, it's my favorite Ozzy song, so it might be in my top 25 songs of all time. But this really solidified him as a solo artist to continue to have a career, and it kind of went from there. So that's why I felt it's so important and one of the songs that really defines heavy metal, because Ozzy, of course, is heavy metal. He's one of the godfathers. But this could have gone in 100 different ways, and it went in the direction of amazing record, amazing song. And yeah, here we go. Ozzy is reestablished as this superstar and continued to be.
It was more personal for me, but I didn't realize now that you're explaining that. I'm like, oh, that does make a lot of sense. There's some questions about anybody. Anytime somebody breaks out in a solo gig, like we've seen it time and time again, somebody's like going out and doing, okay, you're going to break away from this epic band. Not everybody is Ozzy Osbourne and not everybody is Dave Mustaine. Like there's a lot of guys you're like, oh yeah, he left. And then we don't hear from him again. I know it was very personal for me because it was like it entrenched Ozzy as a person that whose music I'm going to enjoy for going on. But yeah, the whole thing with Randy, when I was growing up, it was always like, oh, like early Ozzy is like, oh, well, they had this guy named Randy Rhoads. Like, it's funny too, when you go back and you learn the history of rock and roll. And I found out that Randy Rhoads was in Quiet Riot. You're like, what? Like that? What is going on? Like that. And Kevin DuBrow is one of my favorite singers of all time. So you're like, oh my God, like learning so much about this. So I get it now. I'm getting chills thinking about this. Like this had to be like even more than like just me being an idiot kid about like, but like for people who were questioning whether Ozzy was going to go out there and still be the same. And for me, I think it is important because he continued to be amazing. And it's But there's some other bands that when you lose a key person, you're like, nah, it just wasn't quite the same. They're good, but wasn't quite the same.
That's normally the rule.
Yeah, right.
Like, this is an exception to the rule, because that if you lose a singer, really, singers are the worst one to lose, obviously. And there's a handful of bands you can count on one hand that bands that became successful afterwards. You know, Black Sabbath, AC/DC. There's a few. Yeah. But normally, the guitar player who's the main guy, that's the other part. Like, you lose. Like, for example, Black Sabbath could never be Black Sabbath without Tony Iommi. Like, just
right.
Be, you know, so you've got that, and even a band like Iron Maiden, when Adrian Smith left, like, they struggled mightily until he came back too. So losing that was a big proponent. The other thing that I find interesting doing this podcast is I'm talking to a lot of people who are a little bit younger than I am, and they come in with a little bit of a different perspective of what their favorite songs are because of when they came into that band. Like, for your case, Ozzy Osbourne, this being the record you came in, so it makes sense that you would pick this too because of when you started to come in with a
for sure. And I'm like that quintessential 80s kids. It's funny because I'm trying to find my list too, because I know I might have stuck Mama I'm Coming Home on that, because when I did it, we were celebrating Ozzy's career, and you're like, in the moment, like, I could see myself being a little bit more like sentimental of like, oh my God, that was the song he closed with. But I really love, like, I mean, obviously early Ozzy. It's still really, I mean, you're still going to lean towards the early Ozzy and Mr. Crowley and like a lot of those. Even, it was a thing too, like when Suicide Solution came out, like that was going to be the thing that Tipper Gore got music banned forever. And you're like, as a rebellious person, you're like, well, I'm gonna dig in and really enjoy this song and really enjoy this music. Because it's funny, because I saw him when I was younger and I was junior high and all that stuff, and going in and seeing like what would be considered the sweet spot for Ozzy. And you would go out and, like, there were still the rumors like he bit the head off a bat, or people would spit in a cup and pass it to him or whatever, which might or might not have happened.
He definitely bit the head off a bat, but he didn't realize it was a real bat.
Right. But like those kind of things. And then did see him when he was for out here in Southern California, K-Rock 106.7. It's more alternative. So if you ever listen, if you have Sirius XM, anybody who's on channel 33 was once a DJ on KROQ, but they did a festival every summer. It was called the Weenie Roast. I guess they probably still do it, but they still do it. And one year they had Ozzy on it, and it was just like, it's so funny, like how much respect he has of like people who would be into. And I think some of the bands who were playing were like Limp Bizkit, Everclear was on the bill. This wasn't one of the Blink 182 years, but it was, but everybody was still stoked. Linkin Park might have been on there, but like Ozzy was like the third, like, everybody left after Ozzy. Like, okay, we're good. Hey, here comes Tool. You're like, oh, great, good for them. We're leaving. I've seen it all. But even then, you still want a little bit more of a hardcore, like, but still, it's Ozzy. Like, it's a legitimate, and also too, this is a funny thing too about Ozzy, which I really liked about him was, as a kid who grew up watching professional wrestling, there was a tag team called the Road Warriors who, when they came to the WWE, were Legion of Doom. But when they were the Road Warriors, they used Iron Man. And it's just like there was like, for somebody to have so many iconic songs for two different things, really says something about himself.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's in pop culture now. It's everywhere. But funny you mentioned the wrestling thing, because I'm not a wrestling guy. I was when I was a kid, but there's so many current wrestlers that are massive metalheads. I mean, there's tons of them. One of my good friends is Chris Jericho, and I don't know anything about his wrestling career. We're just Iron Maiden nerds and metal nerds, but we text all the time about all that stuff. But yeah, there's probably 10 of them now. It's pretty insane. That whole world is becoming kind of metal. I was going to ask, so when was the first time you saw Ozzy? Was it at the Weenie Roast or was it before that?
No, it was before that. He was. It was him and Motley Crue.
Okay, and that was with the Jake E. Lee Bark of the Moon tour, I think.
Yeah, Jake E. Lee. I'm pretty sure it was I think it might have been for support of Bark of the Moon. And this is like the first time. So
I'm trying to remember, because I saw that show too, and I remember seeing. In fact, I saw it at the Forum, and I'll relay later the story that I was going to tell you about Jake. By the way, Jake, phenomenal guitar player, started in Rat. He was in Rat when they ended up being on the first Metal Massacre record as well.
Okay.
And Jake E. Lee was in Rat, but he had just left when we did the track for the Metal Massacre record. So I've known Jake for forever and ever, and just such a great guy. And one thing too about this song, he's such a great guitar player, and the solos in the song are phenomenal. Yeah. And I think I know he had, obviously huge shoes to fill with, replacing Randy Rhoads. How do you do that? This iconic guitar player.
Right.
So he came in, and I know he tried really, really hard to make those leads special. And that outro of this song might be one of my favorite leads of all time. That outro is like, it's just so incredible.
Yeah.
And so hard to play. I don't play any instruments at all. I can't even strum a guitar.
Right.
But that outro is just so amazing. Every time I hear it, I go, man, that is mind blowing.
Yeah. You know what? And as somebody who like modestly played guitar, like I was not an accomplished guitar player or anything. Not that it was simple, but like one of the first songs that people like in my class who had a bunch of like as you would imagine, it was a bunch of metal kids who would you would learn like Crazy Train, and not that it was easy, but like in the solo, but like trying to play something like Bark at the Moon, you're like, Christ, I can't know. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like, I'm not talented enough to do this. Like I can't. Not that it's
fast,
but it was like, oh God, like how do you have the dexterity for that? Like that's one of the things that was always so amazing, which is probably why I try to start doing bass guitar so I could be a little bit more doom, 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 doom,
less strings.
Yeah, right. Like a little bit, but yeah, like the guitar on that it's so amazing, and obviously I think in the lexicon of sports, like Crazy Train becomes this thing. And I know that I touched on this when I did my list on the After Hour. It does become something bigger than of itself. And I think that Crazy Train will elicit something because you associate it with like going to a Chargers game or whatever it is. And it's just such a great song. I was like, I wish Bark at the Moon, like, cause musically and the way that the way that it goes is it really gets you fired up. I noticed this too, because like, I have 3 different lists for my kids for when they're practicing, when they're doing football practice or soccer to you Americans, soccer and flag football practice. Is I have 3 different lists. One of them is the like Richard Blade approved. One of them is Ricky Rackman approved. So it's like more metal, but it's like Bark at the Moon's on that. And when you're listening to it musically, you're like, God, this song gets you charged up. And I know that it's not like, again, like, everybody knows Crazy Train. It's like if you're going to Las Vegas and you're going to see like Spandex Nation or Arena or somebody, and they're just playing the hits of 80s bands, then like you will know Crazy Train. Bark of the Moon gets people who are like, I kind of know this music. Do I know this song? Like, who is this? Like, whose song is this? Like, it's like, you don't know whose song this is? Because I have friends that we go out, we play this game. Actually, we retired the game. We would play this game called what song is this? Recognize the song. And the first hour of this band, it's going to be Crazy Train. It's going to be Round and Round. And it's going to be like that. And then when you get to the later, like once you get past the 12 to 1 a.m. set is where I always brought it home, because you would be like, they would play Bark at the Moon, lack of communication, like a lot of those things where you're like, oh, lack of communication. Like whose song is this? You're like, it's a Rat song, but whatever. They're not playing Shot at the Devil. They're playing Too Fast for Love. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff.
Deep tracks.
Yeah, deep track. It was funny. This band was funny because they would do that. They're like, okay, like we got rid of all the tourists here on Fremont. So if you're here for us right now. Let's get a little deep. You're like, yeah, go play Down Boys. Like, yeah, don't play Cherry Pie. Play Down Boys. Let's go.
What band was that?
It was a band called Arena.
No.
And they gave way to another band called Spandex Nation, and neither one of them played. But no, they were so cool. So it was at the end of Fremont, in between the Golden Gate and what was then the Las Vegas Club, which then became a big hole in the ground, which is now Circa. And so yeah, there we go. And like Arena was those guys were. I think Spandex Nation was cool. Like they were fun.
I heard Spandex Nation. I didn't hear Arena, but what era of Vegas was that? Like what years?
So this would have been between 2005 and 2015-ish.
That's probably why. That's right before I moved here. So I did spend a lot of time here.
Okay, yeah. Spandex Nation is great. I love Spandex Nation. Great guys, really cool. But Arena was the one that was on before them. In that same spot, I know that Spandex Nation now does Carnival Court or whatever.
There's a bunch of those. Spasmatics are the best one of that bunch, but
okay.
That's a whole another story. By the way, you mentioned K-Rock. I wanted to talk about K-Rock for a real quick second. Those of you that don't know, K-Rock is this legendary radio station in Southern California that pretty much pioneered all the alternative stuff going all the way back to the 80s. But the funny thing about K-Rock was that they were secretly play a lot of metal. The first time when it came out, I ever heard Back in Black by AC/DC. K-Rock of all things played the whole album at like midnight, and they played a lot of Ozzy. They would play Metallica here and there. They would play some metal stuff on occasion, which is kind of what made them so cool, because they had all the great alternative stuff, but then they'd mix in like little things of other genres too. But yeah, legendary radio station. I'm glad it's still kind of living there.
At least it's living on Sirius in a way too. And it's funny because like Richard Blade's gonna play like Duran and players. Not that he's not cool. I love.
Oh, he's
Richard
a legend.
Blade.
He's a legend.
He's one of my favorite in the music. Might be because like he came to my high school one year. It was really cool, and it was funny. They were one of the first ones that played the Beastie Boys.
Yep.
Where you're like, oh my gosh, like we're playing Beastie. Like okay, like this was cool. And then like the other stations and like Power 106 would play it instead. And then the year that Metallica did the Weenie Roast, they're like, we're going full-fledged Metallica, because you would hear, like you're saying, you would hear AC/DC or whatever. It was usually a guy, Rodney on the Rock, would do a lot of that stuff. It depended on like the time of the day. Like if you're listening, Richard Blade was on after Kevin and Bean. So like we're getting
the Poor Man would play it.
Yeah, Poor Man. Because Poor Man was the late guy before he started doing Loveline, before he created Loveline. He would be the one, and he would be like, you could call him up and be like, hey, play Back in Black or something like that, where it wasn't a normal in rotation K-Rock song, and he would do it because he was cool.
So you mentioned Metallica, the big news this week. So Metallica coming to Sphere here in Las Vegas. Are you excited about that? Are you going to try to make it out for one of those shows?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I saw U2 there. Well, I saw 3/4 of U2 there. Larry wasn't there. Larry wasn't. So somebody asked me the other day, like, have you ever seen U2 in concert? And I said, no. And then one of the moms in the drop-off line's like, you went to their show when you were in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. I'm like, yeah, I saw 3/4 of them. Larry Mullen Jr. was not there. So no, I've never seen, like, oh, criminy. They're like, okay. And then somebody tried to stump me. They're like, you've never seen Blink 182. And I'm like, bro, I was going to Blink 182 shows when Scott Rayner was the drummer. I've seen every iteration of that band. So don't stump me on that. I've seen most versions of Motley Crue. So, but like stuff like that. A lot of combinations of Iron Maiden. But with U2, like it was such an incredible experience that as somebody who I like U2 enough, I was not upset when they gave us free, like so amazing. Like they gave you a free album and everybody hated it. I'm like, really? Like, remember when Lars was fighting you and he's like, don't take our music off Napster, leave all the money for us. And you're like, okay. But like U2's like, hey, no, you guys here, take our music. And they're like, no.
Well, to be fair to Lars, he didn't care about the Metallica money. He was worried about everybody else.
Was he?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Lars is one of my really good friends. I've known him because I've known him since he was 16. So
okay,
do the math there. I won't do it because it makes me really old. But anyway, so no, he was doing that all for everybody else. He didn't care about Metallica. Okay. He doesn't care about money or Metallica. He was doing that for all the other bands, and it proved out in the end he was kind of right, because it did kind of destroy the music business for a while, and now it's kind of reinvented itself, and it needed to. All that stuff needed to happen. So I'm glad it did. But I want to go down that rabbit hole too far.
You know what though? But I think you need to say it, because like for the lay person like me, I'm like, why is it like, you don't have enough money? But I get it now.
No, he really, I mean, he probably didn't explain it in the best way possible back then. But no, he was absolutely doing it for everybody else. He didn't care about Metallica and Metallica's money. He's just worried, like, look, if there's a band out there that's, surviving on that income, and that's the only way they can make music, you take that away from them, they can. And that's kind of the way it became after a while. For us metalheads, the metalheads were really great. It kind of became a badge of honor to actually buy the music. And, a lot of bands just said, hey, look, you can get it all for free. That's fine. But we can't do what we do anymore. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's all sorted out and it's fine. And
where weren't you there in the 90s explaining this? This would have saved everybody else.
I was there, but I only have a small window back then. It's not I'm not Metallica level. So, but it's all good now. And we did one thing real quick on that. We didn't like tell people it was bad. We said, how can we use this to our advantage? So I think we kind of got through that better than a lot of people, just because we weren't the big bad, record label saying, no, don't do this. So
it's one of those things again, where you cause a class war between the people who should be united.
Sure.
Like, we should be united against the record companies. Like, why are they getting all the money?
Yeah.
Why aren't the artists getting, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you're 100% right. But the real big problem, the essence of why this happened was, and I remember this very well. Like, I would go buy a record. It could be $20 to buy a record back then.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear it beforehand. You didn't know what was on it. You buy a record and there's one good song and the rest of it was just garbage. And that happens so often that people just got so sick of that. It's like, well, if I can get it for free, I'm not going to waste $20 for one stupid song. So what that did was it made the artists actually have to make good music and be aware that I can't just go through the motions and put out a record with one good song. Like, we have to really do this the right way. So in the long run, it was really beneficial, strangely enough, for the music business. Just had to go through that little phase. Switching subject a bit, real quickly though, I did want to make a point that, you talked about Bark at the Moon not being played as much as sporting events.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big hockey guy, and a lot of, metal gets played at all the hockey games, and I'd say 10 to 12 of the DJs who do all the NHL teams, all huge metalheads. I've noticed in the last couple of years that Bark at the Moon is making this little comeback now.
Oh, good.
Places like Anaheim and Pittsburgh, Washington, Minnesota, a few of the places where they play a lot of metal. So maybe it'll catch on.
It doesn't surprise me about Anaheim. Now, I grew up a Kings fan, so I can't give the Ducks too much credit, but they do a really nice job because they play a lot of Social Distortion. They play a lot of Pennywise. What you would consider Orange County band. I think in the Offspring, I think would be in on that. I know they're not real, but I see Dexter at Don Ramone's all the time. So, or I've seen him there twice. So that to me is a lot. But it's like they do a really nice job of playing those bands that are connected to Orange County. And it wouldn't shock me if they started playing a little bit more Bark at the Moon, as they should. But I want to go back to Metallica at the Sphere. I do really love this idea, because if there is the one thing that I really love about Metallica, and I do like Lars. I didn't see him, but he was in one of those documentaries when Iron Maiden was coming back, and he was backstage just geeking out over Iron Maiden. I'm like, what a cool guy.
He is.
Like, I'd be the same way. The one thing that I love about Metallica is that they do the nights, and they're like, hey, we're going to do, when you have a catalog as extensive as them, they're like, we're going to do 2 nights because we can do that. And it's not that to me. And like somebody like I'm like, I love that. And then you can kind of pick your night. Like for me, I might want to see more of the Cliff Burton era of Metallica. Nothing against Jason and all the other guys, but it's like, I love, like, if they did a show at anywhere where they're like, we're just going to play Ride the Lightning front to back, I would be like, take my money. Like, whatever amount of money it costs me to get into the show, I will go see it. So I think that when they're going to do the Sphere, as great as U2 did, and they did an amazing job.
Yes.
I think Metallica is going to, I think they're going to beat it. I think it's going to be better.
Yeah, real quick story on that. So when I went to the first, I saw U2 3 times out here. So the first night I went, so U2 and Metallica are very, very close, very, very close. They've been close for a long time. So I know Lars was at the opening of Sphere with U2.
Yeah.
So I texted him. I said, hey, I'm going to go see U2 tonight. He's like, oh man, you got to let me know what you think. I'm like, okay, sure. So after the show, he texts me like, what'd you think? I go, I need like at least a night to just process what I just saw. Because it's just, I mean, I've seen 6,000 concerts, and this is nothing like you'll ever see ever.
Right.
So we were texting the next day about it, and he was so excited by the technology, and it was like a game changer and all these things. I could tell from that text that they're going to play here because they always want to do stuff.
Of course.
That's different, that, it isn't the same thing. We always harp on about the one thing, or one of the things they really want to do more than anything else is play the Super Bowl halftime. And they can't be.
And it drives me like San Francisco once again, blew an opportunity. I didn't mind Bad Bunny. I think it's cool, but like Metallica is associated with Los Angeles, not as much as San Francisco, but it wouldn't seem out of place.
No, anyone. And the thing is, I went to the Super Bowl here in Vegas and I texted out or tweeted out like, hey, Metallica can't play here, but they just played 7 Metallica songs in the first half of the game.
Yeah.
But the reason is, Rock Nation's doing it and they're not going to bring anything that's a rock and roll band in. And the other really big problem is Metallica's not going to play they're not going to lip sync. They'll never lip sync. And that's the whole NFL. You got to lip sync because there could be a technical issue or something, which is kind of nonsense. But who knows? Maybe one day, knock on wood, that may happen. But
I know I've done lists like this, not necessarily for the after hour, but for other things where it's like Metallica, for somebody who's lived on this earth over the last 70 years or whatever, like Metallica has touched your life in some way. It's getting to the point too of like, when we have those conversations like, hey, whoever you liked David Bowie. And I think like there's a lot of truth to that with Metallica too, because if nothing else, there is something that you identify with and you're like, whether it's Enter Sandman or some of the newer stuff or anything like that. And they keep going and they keep kicking ass. They never take shortcuts. And that's one of the things too about U2. And it doesn't shock me that these bands are close because to me, like musically, they're not the same, but like as performers, I could see them having so much in common because they will do so much to go out there and put on an amazing show. And the only reason that I'm saying is that Metallica is going to outdo U2 is that U2 was the first one up. They're the ones who had to work out the kinks. And so now Metallica gets a little bit of an advantage of like, well, we kind of know and we can kind of build off of what we've seen from other people, including the Eagles or whomever's been out there. So I wouldn't bet against U2 being like, no, we're going to come back and we're going to go over. Because like, if I'm not mistaken, we would be getting near like another anniversary. And I think the Joshua Tree is another, like that would, I know they did the tour for it and everything, but it's like, but I would love to see them do the Joshua Tree, like a little, do that show again.
Please, that's my favorite U2 record. That would be amazing. It
is such a great, and you were worried about Red Hill Mining Company, that song. Everybody was nervous, like, Bono, a little older now. Can't hit that. But the way they did it with the Salvation Army band, like, oh, that was so good. Like, what a great job they did.
There are tricks that you can use now, like tuning down and other things where you don't have to hit those high notes as much. But it's going to be good. But the one last thing on the Metallica Sphere thing is that what's really interesting about it, which is going to make it unique, is they're doing the same thing that they've done, for the last couple of years, where it's like no repeats. So they're doing 2 shows. You buy 1 ticket, you get to go to both shows,
of course,
and they're not going to repeat it. So for those of you that have not been to Sphere yet, it's all about the graphics. And the graphics all link up with the songs. So Metallica is going to do 2 separate shows with 2 different set lists. So the visuals for both shows are going to be completely different, which also is going to cost a fortune. Yeah. But they can afford it. They have the money, so they'll be okay. But it's going to be really interesting. I'm excited to see what they do. I know a little bit about it. I don't want to know too much because I want to be, surprised when I go, but I know a little bit about the staging and stuff, and it's definitely going to be different from anybody you've seen there before. That's for sure.
What night are they playing Fight Fire with Fire?
I don't know. I can, if you go,
they're probably not playing it. They're not.
They'll play it. Oh, they'll definitely.
That's a deep album.
No, they've been playing it. In fact, I saw them a year and a half ago in Dallas, the 2 shows. They played Fight Fire with Fire. They played a lot, actually.
I've never seen that song live.
Oh, they played a lot. They played a lot. Well, you let me know when you're going, and I'll try to make sure they play Fight Fire with Fire, or I'll tell you which night they are playing it.
Yeah, no. Just arrange that way. It's like another thing too with for the longest time, it took me forever to find a Maiden show. Oh God, Iron Maiden would be great at the Sphere.
I know.
They're another one that would go all out and find a way.
They're interesting. They're my favorite band of all time, by the way. And I've oddly enough become really good friends with their manager, Rod Smallwood, which if we'd have told 18-year myself that's possible, I would have said you're crazy. But they're really kind of interesting about those sort of things. I've talked to them a little bit about it. They don't want to do it. They're like, no, we don't really want to do it. It's not kind of our thing. We don't want to do, they don't want to do a residency sort of thing, which Metallica did the same thing. So maybe this will kind of break down that barrier a little bit because, Metallica's like, we want to do it, but we don't want to do the residency thing. So we'll see. I'm going to see Iron Maiden this summer. So that absolutely is one of my questions to Rod. It's like, so, hey, what about Sphere? Now Metallica's doing it.
But I was going to say, it took me forever for me to finally see The Prisoner in concert. Like, oh my God. I haven't done an Iron Maiden list, but I would think, I'm going to give it away here. I think Prisoner might actually be my favorite Iron Maiden song of all time.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. My favorite song of all time is Hallowed Be Thy Name by Iron Maiden. But it's a great song. But there's, in any of these sort of things, there's really no wrong thing. So before I let you go, though, I do, because I'm a long time fanatical clone. I've listened to Jim for 30 some odd years. I have to ask you, how did you get the gig for the After Hour?
A lot of luck, I think. A couple of years ago, Jim Rome started following me on Twitter. I'm like, what the? All right. Like, okay, cool. But I've always been I've been a clone for, I remember his show. I did a podcast with him before I became the co-host of the After Hour. I did a show with him and I talked about, he didn't realize, like, he's like, geez, you go way. I'm like, no, bro. Like, before we even started playing Up All Night, before that, back when Larry King took the last hour of your overnight show, when, you were doing the Scrubs Saturday show, like all this stuff, and like going and seeing him at Rubens and Charlie Brown's and all these places around. A couple of years ago, before they hired Will Blackman, I had talked to him about it. That was back when his show was 9 to 12. And so it wasn't going to work out for me timing wise. And so it was like, okay, like I really wish we could have made this happen. It would have been fun, but I got NFL Fantasy Live, which is my main priority. So I got to do that. And then he did the T-Bob thing. And then I had done his podcast when T-Bob was leaving for Barstool. And so they were like, hey, you know what? And so Adam, behind the scenes, Adam reached out to me. He's like, hey, I know we've talked about this before. Would you still have interest? And I'm like, yeah, of course I would. And now, because of the show being on from noon to 3, this 3 o'clock hour is actually very, very conducive for my schedule at the time being. So, it worked its way out.
You are phenomenal doing it, by the way. So great job there.
That's nice.
And you were great today. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Like anytime. I really enjoyed this.
That was a lot of fun. Big thanks to Adam Rank for doing this. I'm a huge Jim Rome fan and become a big fan of Adam for his appearances Tuesday through Friday on the After Hour with Jim Rome and all his stuff on NFL Network as well. Always Bill Metoyer. Love having him on. And of course, Martin Popoff. Lizzie Borden, who does our theme song, and the man who keeps everything going here, our producer, Mr. Christian Blatt. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next episode.